Hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the show. My name is Deanna Yates, and you are listening to episode 258 of the Wannabe Clutter Free podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by Kelly Nolan, an attorney turned time management strategist and mom of two who created the Bright Method, a realistic time management system designed specifically for women who are juggling it all. And after burning out in her high-pressure legal career, Kelly realized that the traditional productivity advice just wasn't cutting it. So she developed a method that helps women manage their careers, homes, families, and even personal time with less stress and a lot more clarity. Sounds fantastic. So if you've ever felt like you are constantly running behind, trying to remember everything, and somehow still dropping the ball, this conversation is for you. We talk about managing the mental load, using your calendar as your second brain, and what the heck do you do when life throws you completely off the rails? But before we dive in, I just want to say thank you to you for being with me today. If you enjoy this episode, can you please take a second to follow or subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode? And if there's a topic that you would love me to cover or a guest you want me to chat with, well, connect with me on Instagram. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free, or in our private Facebook group, the Wannabe Minimalist Family, and let me know. I would love to have a conversation with you. So you can also grab the show notes and the links for this episode by heading to wannabeclutterfree.com/258. Again, that's wannabeclutterfree.com/258. All right, let's get into this game-changing conversation with Kelly Nolan. Well, hey, Kelly, welcome to Wannabe Clutter Free. How you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, and it's really fun to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you. We were just connecting before we started hitting the record button. Thankfully, I actually have some of it on the record button, so maybe we'll include it in. But we were just connecting that we've met virtually, but we have never actually sat down to have a conversation. And so it is so nice to have you here. I'm really looking forward to this. So can you tell us all a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure thing. Well, I'm excited to be here for similar reasons, and that I feel like I've gotten to know you through summits, but then remember that it was all pre-recorded. So it's all nice to actually interact with you live. My name is Kelly Nolan. I was an attorney in Boston and in San Diego, and I had been decently organized up until my attorney days and then got really overwhelmed at a certain point. And I looked for a lot of help out there and nothing really stuck. And so slowly over time, I started piecing together my own weird time management system. And I kept practicing. I thought that the system I was creating was just helping me catch up to where everybody else already was. And it wasn't until years later that I was like, oh, other people feel how I felt and are interested in learning the system. And so I actually left law almost 8 years ago now, which is wild, and have been teaching this system, and I call it the Bright Method, and I absolutely love it. It's really fulfilling, and I work mostly, predominantly with women who work outside the home, a lot of women in corporate, attorneys, physicians, college professors, nonprofit space, but really it's a system designed for any woman in a way that a lot of time management systems didn't capture when I was trying to figure out time management.
Yes, always coming from that perspective of the working man, right? Generally is where things kind of start, and we got to be like, no, it doesn't really work. We got to make it work for us. So I love that so much. And what you said there too was that moment of like, you just thought you were catching up to everyone. And it's so interesting how we can put our own negative beliefs or limiting beliefs on where we are or what we're doing. And we think everyone else has it figured out, but that is not often the case. And so I appreciate that you have been able to help others through this journey of discovery as well. So let's go back though to that moment. You said you were that overwhelmed litigator, you're juggling your demanding career. What was the turning point that made you realize that something had to change in how you managed your time?
I wouldn't say there was a specific time. I just remember I was reliable. I hit all my deadlines. On the outside, I looked like I had it together. It was more just inside. I just was really constantly uneasy. I was dropping a ball. I wasn't sure what all the balls were that I had in the air. So I was just constantly worried, is something falling? Am I missing something? And one of the other things is I do have vivid memories of being out at restaurants or bars with friends on those rare nights out I got out, and they're mid-story telling me something so interesting, and then a work thought would just hijack my thoughts, and suddenly my brain's over here and I'm pretending I'm still paying attention even though I'm so stressed out about this work thing. And just on the whole, I remember thinking like, this cannot be what adulting life is supposed to feel like. I almost like reject that this is how it's supposed to be. And for me, looking back, I realized it was just a tipping point of life getting more complicated. I like to think that I was a bit of an early bloomer in this. For a lot of women I work with, there is some tipping point, whether it's a new job, a new promotion, a baby, a second baby. Like there's just something that basically the systems that got them really far and served them really well and used to give them peace of mind and that feeling on top of it and just I'm organized, that feeling, those systems just aren't keeping up with their life anymore. But the system has served them well. And this is where my thought was, is like, I had all these systems, they worked, they work, therefore must be me, without realizing, no, your life has changed a lot. Your system just can't keep up with this new, more complicated life now.
Right. It's like that blockus. Is that the game? Like where you have to like put all these like weird, funky shape blocks on top of each other and you have to stack this pyramid up. And then it's like you keep stacking until it falls over. I think that's what it's called. I'm not 100%, but there's a game like that. And it just reminds me of that. Like everything was going well. The bottom was stable. I had everything in place and it was all lined up and it was just fine until I had to place that one more on top and it went, guess what? It wasn't as stable as you thought it was underneath here. Yeah.
Yes. That's such a good analogy because you're right. It's like we do that. And if we think about that game, we're like, well, obviously at a certain point, it's not going to hold up. But when we're living it, we're like, well, I was stacking those other blocks. I stacked 10 of those other blocks. Why isn't this one working? That's a really good analogy.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, yeah, you don't have that perspective of life of like, at some point, something's got to give. No, we're told more. You can do it all. You are a superwoman. You can just, hustle culture, just keep pushing, just keep doing. And it's just, like you said, it's just you. Like something must be wrong with you. And I appreciate that you are shining the light and saying, no, it's just that we have to do either something a little bit differently, or maybe we have to kind of rearrange these blocks a little bit because it's no longer functioning. So tell us about that BRIGHT method. You brought that up. So you have the BRIGHT method. Can you give us an overview of what makes it different from like a typical time management or, we hear a lot of time blocking, productivity advice. What makes it a little bit different?
Yeah, well, so a couple things. So high level, just what the BRIGHT method is, it's leveraging digital calendars. So Outlook, Google, Apple, or some combination. A lot of people are in like Outlook for work and Google for personal or Apple for personal. And so just using these systems, these platforms that we're familiar with to some degree, but really leveraging them with smarter strategies. And in my opinion, well, let me go back. Still high level, it's a lot of time blocking with combination with planning sessions. The difference, I think, with the BRIGHT method versus just time blocking and things like that is that, as with a lot of time management things, I think people throw about time management concepts as if they're easy. So when I was overwhelmed, of course I heard, time block or batch or plan. And I'm like, okay. And we have this conception like we should be naturally good at time management and these systems or these concepts are simple enough. And then we go to implement and we struggle to implement. And so what I have found is just part of what makes the BRIGHT method different is that we go step by step through it. So for example, a big mistake with time blocking is people are like, okay, that makes sense. They get out their to-do list and they start time blocking their to-do list. In reality, though, there are a lot of things we do every day that are not on our to-do list, like waking up and, showering and getting ready and making meals and walking the dog. And if you have little kids, bed and bath time, if you have older kids, homework, like all this kind of stuff that we typically never calendar. We don't even put it on a to-do list. We hold it in our head. We rearrange it in our head. We hold it all there. And it just sounds kind of weird to be like, well, let's calendar all of that. And people are like, what? But then you lay it out and you're like, oh, this is like 4 to 5 hours of my day. And I've been weighing my brain down with all this information and rearranging and memorizing the plan and moving it and all this kind of stuff. And to me, that's just such a great example of let's actually start with that. And then you see the remaining capacity you have to give to the to-do list. And so instead of, let's say, looking at a 12-hour day that looks mostly like white space and time blocking all of that and thinking you have a plan and then not hitting the plan and feeling defeated, you're like, I never had 12 hours. I really had more like 4 or 5 hours in here after all this other stuff and checking email and all these meetings and all this kind of stuff. And now I understand more of my capacity. And I also understand how that I need to prioritize, but then I can prioritize well and knock it out of the park. And going back just to some other things that are different about the Bright method, the other thing is what I touched on is that it is designed for women, and it is no knock on men. And I'm sure a lot of men can relate to what I will say, but I do find, very generally speaking, stereotyping a lot, women carry a lot of the load at home and the load of a lot of the other outside of work roles. And so when I was trying to make systems by men work, it kind of presupposed a level of support at home that I did not have even when I was single, which I know a lot of single men can relate to. And then as I've become a mom and a wife, the double whammy is that you're also not just do not have that support, you're often providing it. So it's like a double whammy here. And so what I find with this time management system is that it accounts for the mental load, it accounts for all the roles we play, it facilitates conversations with partners because then you can show them the load you're carrying and then share the load more equitably. And then also it helps with the very real, unfortunate difference in perception of how women come off when they draw boundaries. And so it helps women understand their workload, understand when to say no, have the specifics to say no and the confidence to back it up so that we actually say no. So I know I kind of was wide ranging there, but I would say the Bright method is a little bit different of that it's very practical, deals with the mental load, and really helps meet women where they are so that we feel confident drawing boundaries so we actually do it.
Yeah. Yep. And I love how you said no bash on men. We're not men bashing here. I think, everyone has their roles to play in life and in partnerships. And, I don't want to go through life all on my own. I want to be surrounded by the people I love. And I want that to be a fulfilling relationship and something that we all look forward to, so yeah, absolutely. I'd never want it to be like a, whatever. Yeah.
No. And I'll say a real testament to a lot of the people I work with who are in relationships with men is that often a big win is their partnership is improved because I do think, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I do think a lot of men do want to help. They just don't always know where to step in and how to do that. Again, not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm a realist. And if that's what needs to be done and shows them what's on tap and how they could lighten your load by taking over certain parts of this, a lot of men, like male partners, do step up. And that was a surprise for me. I kind of thought I was really focusing on work. And I have a lot of clients being like, my biggest one is I just have a better partnership at home now. I feel more like sharing the load in partners, which is awesome. I'll take it.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, and two, you also then learning, like as the person that's going through this, to what it is that you're actually doing, how to, what you said there, communicate, how to actually figure out what it is. Because I think sometimes, myself included, like, something could come up and I want to ask you what to do in this situation. Like, you're doing fine, things are going, and then life happens, right? You get a sick kid, someone gets hurt, something happens to where all these balls that you were juggling, all of a sudden you either get another one and you're like, okay, I can't go faster. I don't know what to do. Or you get taken out, right? You're sick. Like, what are some of the ways that we can combat these issues when life just gets in the way? Yeah, let's go there. Let's start there. Yeah. I could make that more complicated, but let's not.
No. A lot of different options. So one is kind of looking big picture and just thinking, we don't know when the curveballs are coming, but there are seasons that we know they're coming probably more often. Like, December is really busy. January has a lot of germs. Sometimes February has a lot of germs. May is really busy if you have school-aged kids, things like that. So just kind of thinking about your year high level and then reminding yourself when it matters that those months are coming. So for example, if your January was like completely derailed by germs and you're like, that actually tends to be almost every January, then you can kind of think, okay, maybe in November and December, every week when I do my planning, I'm going to remind myself to keep January light. And I might even put calendar reminders in January. So that's like a little bit of a proactive approach. Another one to reduce those curveballs, particularly the germ ones, are really like having proactive splitting up who's on kid backup. If you have a partner, having that proactively. That's a big thing we could get into, but I'll just throw that out there that a lot of couples do that really well, even if partners don't have flexible jobs. So you might have a partner who does not have a flexible job, and then somebody who does a little bit more of a flexible job, and just being like, the flexible partner takes the first day because they can, but then the next partner takes the following days if there are follow-up days, because then they have more time to move things around. There are a ton of creative solutions that women in my community have come up with. These are not all my ideas that I think are awesome. But let's say the curveball hits and you're just like reeling or tummy sinking, that like, oh gosh, no, I lost my whole work day. Yeah. So in those scenarios, one thing I will say is when everything is laid out in your calendar, like I prefer, that's really nice because it's just like one-stop shop and you're like, what do I have to rearrange? And I would just fire off all those emails like, I got to move this meeting. I'm so sorry. Let me circle back. You don't even have to find the right time. It's just like a 20-minute, 15-minute, what are the major things I have to like move out or delegate out? And then when things have calmed down a little bit, like a nap or things like that, is really sitting down, I would say by yourself, maybe eventually with a partner if you have one, and just really more triaging, how long do I think this is going to take? Let me be conservative on that. If 3 to 5 days, just move things out the 5 days. And so just finishing up that is like moving things out for those days that you anticipate. And then on the other end of it, I would just really plan on I think of it, I'll call my weekly planning session a clean slate session. Just like cleaning the slate and getting on top of things. And I would actually run one of those after the curveball settles, just to be like, what was going on again? And what do I need to do? And how do I reprioritize? But the combination of all of those things, it's never going to solve it perfectly. Curveballs can be terrible. And we're really just trying to minimize the pain as best we can. It's never going to be puppies and rainbows, but I think that those, like having a rough game plan of how you handle these things can be really beneficial and give you some sense of control through it, even if we lack it.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. And being more realistic, right? Giving yourself a more realistic time frame. I know that we all want to like get back as quickly as we can, but even what you said there, like you think in your head 3 to 5 days, plan for the 5, because if it ends up being 3, then great. You bought yourself a little bit of buffer. You can do the catch up in the meantime if you want to, but there's nothing worse than like being super like aggressive with your timeline when things are crazy and then being like, I'm so sorry. I actually am not going to be able to meet that deadline again. Like that feels so defeating. Ask me how I know. But yeah, like, so I have learned myself to give myself more buffer than I think it's going to take. And I'm one of those people that's constantly trying new things and doing different things. And, a summit sounds fun. I can host a summit. Sure, let's do that, right? And how about we do another one in the same year? And then let's do another one. And let's write a children's book. And let's do all these things. I love that kind of stuff. But I've learned that, yes, I can do that, but I also just have to build it into my schedule and give myself way more time than I think it's going to take.
Which is a great approach because then you actually enjoy it. Like so often we say yes to all these things that standing alone we would like. But if we don't give ourselves breathing space, really good things can stress us out and we might not enjoy them if we're overworked. And so by doing your approach, then you actually get to enjoy this stuff.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I like that a lot. Okay, so let's get back to the poor mom that's, sitting here and she's like, okay, this sounds great, but I am struggling right now. Like, what am I supposed to do today? What are some things that I can do that can really just help alleviate this feeling of overwhelm and stress and guilt and all of the things that we put on ourselves as women, which is we're so nice to ourselves. So how can we help ourselves?
So one thing you can start doing is calendaring some of that invisible to-do stuff. And I think part of that, what helps with that is that I often, when people are like, I'm not getting enough done, I'm like, no, you're not appreciating how much you are doing. And so by calendaring that invisible to-do stuff, it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating to see it all, but at least then you're being honest with yourself about how much you are getting done. And you can rearrange. If you're like, actually, I don't even want to be doing, why am I doing all this stuff? I don't even want to be doing it. Then you can play with that. But what I really want to go to, if you're really overwhelmed, a strangely good bang for the buck thing to do is really thinking about what are the things that are really stressing you out right now. And not just like all of it, but like what are the real stressors? If they are things on your calendar, like a big meeting, or even just like too packed of a weekend with like games of kids or things like that. Like whatever it is really finding those things on your calendar and backing them out a little bit. So I'll take like, if there was some sort of meeting, work or personal life that was stressing you out, is calendaring the driving time for that meeting, calendaring when are you going to pack up your stuff, what do you need to bring, put that in the things you need to bring in the calendar entry. When are you going to, let's say you're kind of doing a presentation or it's even a tricky conversation and you're nervous about it. Do you want to practice what you're going to say? Calendar that, calendar any prep time, calendar any, email if you want to confirm the meeting or need to send an email ahead of time, calendar when you're going to do that. If you need to pick out an outfit, when you're going to shower and get ready for that thing. If you want to work out before so your energy is low, more calm going into it. Anything that comes to mind, really think about all the things you want to do, including follow-up stuff. Even if you don't know what it's going to be, calendar 15 minutes to follow up. If there's a big thing coming out of it, you can always calendar that later. But all the things and calendar that out. And I know it sounds weird, but it is like weirdly relaxing. It like brings the temperature down to be like, okay, these are all the things that go with this. Now I have a game plan. Now I know you have a very clear visual of I do not need to do all these things right now, which I think is part of we're all like stuff in our head because we're going to forget or we have to do it now. And it weirdly brings the temperature down. If something stressing you out is like not something calendared, it's just like an issue in your life, like with a child or something like that. Also thinking about what do I need to do and calendar that out. So if there's something your kid has going on that's really concerning, but you're like, I need to just kind of watch this, calendar 2 weeks from now. If this is still going on, reach out to the pediatrician or the, therapist or whoever it is. If you're nervous, this was an example of, I was really nervous about my daughter taking the bus for the first time. And like every day it was stressing me out. I don't know why, I was just overthinking it and felt guilty. Like, should I be driving her? She's so young and all this kind of stuff. I was like, I have 30 days to make a decision about this. In 2 weeks, reevaluate. And until then, you just observe. And it's weird how I really think our brain holds on to stressors, again, because we're afraid we'll forget or I don't know what we're afraid of, but we like hold on to it. And if you can start using your calendar as a tool to be like, future me will deal with that then, and that's a good plan. I can see how all this comes together. It doesn't need to happen right now. And I'll be reminded to do it in the future. There's such power in that. And I think that hopefully that overwhelmed person listening is like, okay, I'm gonna play with this. We'll just try it out. And even if you're skeptical, just try it.
Yeah, I love that advice of just try it. You never know, right? Here's the thing. If it doesn't work for you, you go right back to where you are right now. So if it works, fantastic. You just found something that might alleviate all of this overwhelm. And if it doesn't work for you, then look to see if there's a different plan. You won't be worse for wear for trying something different and just looking at it with a different perspective. So you mentioned a lot there, kind of this idea of this mental capacity, right? Being able to take it out of our brain, put it on paper, let go of it because we hold on to all of this stuff. And that ties back a lot to that mental load, which we've already mentioned a little bit in this episode. But for those that are not familiar, I think this has been a big term going around a lot, but what would you consider the mental load?
It's a good question. I think it does capture a lot and like different things for different people. I think for me, it's like the not constant, but occasional like whirl of things that you're like, oh yeah, I got to do that or all this kind of stuff. I would say it really skyrockets when you have kids. I don't know, definitely with little kids, I'm sure bigger kids too. And it's just the constant, I wouldn't even say worry, but just remembering of things that you have to do. And often the caretaking side of things we have to do. And so for me, what I have found is that it's just really important to have a system. And to your point before, I don't believe everyone should use my method. I just know it's a method that worked for me and works for the people who opt in to work for me, then it's great. But it doesn't mean everybody should. But whatever the system is, have some sort of system, and system sounds fancy, just some sort of like flow chart of how you manage things. So for me, if I'm on the go, if I'm in the kitchen, if I'm driving in my car and I remember something, I have to capture it. If I try and hold on to it, I will forget about it within 2 minutes. It's just like, it's gone. So I use Siri on my phone to capture. I'm like, remind me to do this, remind me to do this. And I use Apple reminders as just my like capturing zone. And then if I'm at my desk, I will use paper and pen. I still love paper and pen. And then from there, I bridge it into the calendar. And so I'm going into this, not really because it was your question, but it's just a practical way to think of what is mental load, how to capture it, and then bring it to life. And yes, my calendar ends up way more cluttered than it used to. And some people don't like that. But I will say that to me, a cluttered calendar reflects where your time is actually going. And we're just making visual what you're already doing. And if you don't use your calendar that way, you're basically holding it all in your head. And even if you use a to-do list and things like that, you're still reconciling it all and coming up with a game plan in your head. All we're doing with a calendar is doing that and then getting it out of your head so you can see it, you can play with it, you don't have to memorize it. And so essentially, I am going to clutter up your calendar, but I do believe it really lightens up your mind, and that's the bigger priority for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you use the word clutter. I get that. Like, because, I talk a lot about, being clutter free, whether that's physical, emotional, mental, digital. But I do think there is that trade-off, like just what you were saying there, right? So we're going to alleviate some of the mental clutter, which is invisible, which we all feel and makes us feel so heavy. And we're going to put it into, maybe we're going to have some digital clutter for a little while. But as you start to use a system, right, whether it's just little calendar appointments and time slots, it doesn't have to be like a, corporate, big thing. It will also become less clutter because you'll start to figure out which appointments and like how you actually want to keep track of everything and what feels good to you. So I think what might feel cluttered at the beginning, you will learn how to streamline and make your own and won't feel as cluttered as you continue to do it. And plus we also get used to whatever we have around us, right? We get clutter blindness. So if it's helping you and it's not feeling overwhelming, then that's not clutter to me, right? So you could have your entire appointment book could be marked up for 24 hours, including some sleep, right? Because we need sleep in there. So maybe you're marking off even sleep times. Because I got to tell you, that's where I struggle the most is getting my behind to bed. Like that is where I struggle. So I have been trying to set alarms on my phone to go off like, hey, it's bedtime. Go get ready for bed. Stop what you're doing. Turn the computer off. Turn your brain off and go start to get ready for bed. So I want everyone to know, like listening to this, like I struggle with a lot of these things too. And they do ebb and flow for me, right? So sometimes I'm really good with like working out and I get in a groove and I'm like, okay, that I don't even have to think about that anymore. I'm marking it. I know when I'm doing it. It's already planned out, but it's like, it becomes less of a hurdle as it starts to become more of a habit. But there are other things sometimes that are just, those habits do not want to stick. So, yeah.
I completely agree with you. And I think we all go through ebbs and flows. And part of it is just acknowledging we will fall off of whatever wagon we're trying to stay on. But what's our on-ramp back on?
Ooh, I love that. What's our on-ramp back on? And then I also wanted to talk about like with kids, I have found that as my daughter gets older, she is 11, it switches from the tasks of like, okay, brush your teeth, tie your shoes, to more emotional, right? She needs more emotional help. She needs more help with the time management, right? So trying to help model for her and teach her the things. So yes, unfortunately for anyone listening, those things don't go away. They just shift. They change. Some are easier, some are harder, right? Some are easier on the, task management side. So I have a little more time back, but emotionally, some days are a lot more draining than others. And I can't always calendar that stuff in. So what do you recommend for that kind of day, those days?
I think that you're right. I mean, there are days we can't foresee. So I'm not saying that this solves all those issues. I do find that one of my biggest hard parts with parenting when it comes to that kind of stuff is I forget to talk about it. So and so I do use my calendar, especially if it's new. Like once I'm in a habit, sometimes I take it out of the calendar. But if I am like, we need to talk about, listening to teachers or being friends with people, or I want to expand my daughter's social group beyond maybe some kids and just like all those things that come up. is thinking, what do I need to do? And how often do I need to talk to her about this? Or how often should I be scheduling play dates so that we're expanding, whatever it is that comes out of it. So I do use my calendar on that front. I will also say that even though we don't know when they're going to be all the time, there are some times where we know energy might be lower. And this was something I think I heard on the Mom Hour podcast, so I don't want to take credit for it. But it's like, the big back to school first week and weekend, my guess is no matter what age, that can be like a tumultuous emotional time. And also the week before, like the anxiousness going in with kids and stuff. And so just calendaring that, no activities after school these days. No, keep this weekend lighter, that first weekend back. Things like that, and you can repeat that annually and then move it around as like the days shake out. But where you can foresee it, use your calendar to remind you, because even though we're managing the kids' emotions, it's also often up to us to manage and follow up and circle back on issues. And so to the extent it's helpful, I figured I'd throw that out there.
That's super helpful. I'm actually when we're done with this, because I don't have my planner in front of me, I'm just making a note here because we are moving to junior high, right? From elementary school. Huge transition for us. So yes, I am going to block that off. I already know what's in our calendar the week before school starts, but I'm going to block some time for the week of school to really just have those moments. And maybe it is, as I pick her up after school, we go get something outside of the house. So it's just she and I sitting down. Maybe we go to a, Jamba Juice or a Starbucks or something, right? So where we go and have a moment of just like, oh, how did it go? Where there's less distraction. So we can just be a little bit more together. I love that. So yeah, that one's definitely going in my calendar right after this.
Good. It goes to the point of like anytime you go through something, it doesn't mean everything, but anytime you go through something, especially when you feel like you're beating yourself up a bit, I just find it so much easier to be like, how do I avoid this going forward? Instead of, let me just focus on like beating myself up. And so I've had that, like the last day of school, I think after kindergarten, was kind of a mess. It was just a mess, and I didn't handle it well, and I planned too much and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, last day of school, no plans after it. If we're feeling good in the moment and we want to go do something, we can do that, but no planned anything like ahead of time, so that I can just kind of read how we're doing and like let that guide us. And so just anything like that in your life, for anyone listening, that if you're like, my car is a disaster every week, it's like, okay, instead of beating ourselves up, it's like, how are we going to avoid it? How are we going to deal with that? And just start calendaring that stuff in. I'm just such a believer that everything comes back to time, to at least a degree. And so shift into, how do I avoid this going forward, or how can I resolve this, and use that calendar to bring it to life. Because we all set intentions and we totally forget. So the calendar is a nice way to remind us of that stuff.
Totally. I mean, New Year's resolutions, right? I mean, we all know what what happens when, January 3rd rolls around and we go, oh, what did I say? Because life comes up and gets busy and fun things come up, and we have big plans, but what is it? The Mike Tyson quote, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth kind of thing. Anyway, I love that. And I love the idea of debriefing. Instead of beating yourself up, debrief. What is it that I'm feeling? Why do I feel crappy right now? And what can I do so that when this inevitable situation comes up again, what do I want to do next time? And have that proactive, so that you're not just sitting there going, oh, this was the worst. I can't believe I yelled today. I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I did that. Okay, great. That's a bummer. I'm kind of ashamed, or I'm kind of sad that I did that. But, I am a human and I can learn. So what am I going to do next time that makes it different for me and everybody around me? So I love that more proactive take control versus the victimization. Don't victimize yourself. You have capacity to make a change and do it. So go ahead and do it. It's not always fun. I'm not going to, I have the moments too. It's not fun to look in the mirror sometimes, but we got to do it. So take me back to calendars, so I will admit that sometimes my calendar does overwhelm me. So when you were saying like reconciling, some people have different calendars at work and at home, what are your favorite ways to keep your calendars from becoming overwhelming? And I mean, this might be super, super simple for somebody that's been calendaring things for a very long time, but take me back to the basics. Like if someone's starting from scratch, what should I do?
Yeah, so Unfortunately, the tech question, if the listener is in Outlook for work and then Google for personal or Apple for personal, that is the least favorite part of what I do is trying to bring those together. So just know that I do have an article on how to try and get Outlook to talk to Google or Apple and all the different potential ways to do that. Candidly, the really hard part is that Outlook can be totally different for every single person between security settings and versions and whether you use online or desktop. I mean, it's just as fun as it sounds. So there's all that. But just know that even if you can't bring calendars together, there are still ways that we can go about this. And basically, the way I work through it is starting with the repetitive personal things. So that invisible to-do list I was talking about, really focusing mostly on the mornings and the evenings. What are all the things you're trying to do, and block time for them. Repeat them on an ongoing basis. Know that they're flexible. I think of this as like we're really just building out default calendar blocks that then you drag and drop and move around. That is a beautiful part of a digital calendar versus paper, is it's just repeat it going forward and you just move it around to like mold it out to the day. And you can also, repeat something like Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Tuesday, Friday look different. It's really efficient and nice that way. So I would start there. Then I would move into, if you do work outside of the home, but even if you don't, like really thinking about what's your ideal for a week? Like, what does that look like? And you don't have to calendar all of this out, but just thinking about, when is my energy best? When is it not? If you have certain things that dictate, but whether it's children's naps or standing meetings, obviously those go in also. But just kind of thinking about, when do I like to hold meetings? When would I like to check email? Even if you don't work outside the home, personal admin takes up so much time. When would you like to do that? And thinking about energy levels. I love matchmaking high energy things to high energy windows and then lower energy to low. And then we turn to the to-do list stuff. So that's when only then would you turn to your like one-off things. And I would start calendaring those out and really thinking about kind of the example of the meeting I talked about. Like, what are all the things that go into this, and blocking that out so you have a real game plan. The beauty of that is you get that game plan over time. But if you can imagine doing that across everything on your plate, you suddenly have a much more objective understanding of your workload compared to your capacity overall. And that really helps with your own prioritization. It helps you feel empowered to say no. It helps you evaluate other options, because you could even like put a potential option in your calendar, just see what it looks like in there. Does it fit? What does it feel like if you see it in there? And then the final part of this, which I think of as like the chapter 4 part of it, is the weekly planning session. I teach some other planning sessions, but that weekly one is the real game changer. And it's the real cornerstone of no matter what system you use. We all live in the weeds. We all got a lot coming at us all the time. Plans change, all of that, very understandable. Once a week at least, you need to be able to look up and like check in, gather all the action items that flew at you over the week, check in on the big projects, see the big picture, rearrange, plan, like smooth out the next 2 weeks. I like doing 2 weeks at a time. And so that's like the big part of this as well, is really systems. And I would have to imagine this is across the board. Systems only work so well if everything gets in the system. And don't expect yourself to be able to put everything, like all the action items flying at you through email and in-person asks and all those kind of things. Don't expect to put those all in your system, whether it's a calendar or something else, in real time. It would be inefficient, it would be disruptive, it's not realistic. But if you can protect time at least once a week to do that, then you can trust your system for the next week or two, because you know that at least once a week, everything's getting pulled into there and rearranged and maybe eliminated. You might be making decisions to not do something, but you're making those decisions and protecting that time once a week. So again, whether you use my system or something else, a planning session and a real one. I don't know how people plan in just like half an hour. My planning sessions take a solid 2 hours, but they are worth it, and they really corral a lot of the decision making I think a lot of people do all the time. You corral all of that, so you spend the rest of the week in a better spot to just execute and take advantage of the pockets of time you have, versus being like, what am I doing again? what should I use this time for? You have that clarity, and I like doing it at the end of the week, so you get that kind of I'm on top of it high going into your weekend, so you can enjoy it and not have that like looming Sunday scary feeling.
Sunday scaries. Ooh, I appreciate so much what you said there. First off, the fact that you just said it takes you 2 hours. And I appreciate you putting that out there because I do think the expectation is that we spend 15 to 30 minutes planning out our week. And no wonder then we feel behind because we didn't really get a chance to, and but maybe not, because you've been doing this for a very long time and it still takes you 2 hours. So, okay, I was going to say maybe after we do it for a while, it will get shorter and shorter, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. But what else I like that you said there was the fact that you do 2 weeks at a time, which also feels more efficient to me because I will say planning for a week, so much can come up. I don't know. Like, I really just like how you just took what people think should be the expected and just said, you know what? That's not what works for me. That's not how I roll. And I appreciate that so much because it does make sense that some of these things are going to take a lot longer than we think they are. And two, I feel like you just would be so much more efficient when you look at 2 full weeks instead of just the next week, and would help you feel ahead of the game. Like even myself, like with this podcast, right? I could feel so much more ahead of the game knowing that the next 2 weeks are already plugged in versus just this next week coming up. Okay, I'm definitely trying that again also after we get off this call. So yeah.
Good. And yeah, I think that, the 2 hours can, if someone's balking at that and they don't want to do that, that's fine. It's just more than, I teach a really agenda-driven planning session. So then you just have to adjust, what am I not doing in a planning session if I want it to be tighter? Then you just have to be realistic about, again, how long things take. And you can alter your agenda, but then have clarity around it. And I have some clients who will break off chunks and do a chunk of it at a different time so that they're not having, a 2-hour block. It's shorter, but again, they're protecting other time to do some of those things that they think are important to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't always have to sit down and do it all in 2 straight hours, especially, busy moms with little kids. They're like, excuse me, I don't think that's going to work for me, which totally get it. But the fact that you spend 2 hours planning, I think really helps set that expectation that this isn't something that's just super simple to do. We actually have to put a little bit of effort behind it, but then it's going to make everything else so much easier. And I think if we can set that right expectation, it will allow us to not feel so overwhelmed as we're like, especially when we're trying something new and we're just starting out, it can be a little daunting. So yeah, I think we give ourselves that grace and give ourselves just the space to be like, okay, I'm trying something new, just like we don't expect our children to do everything right the first time. I don't know why we have that expectation of ourselves as adult women, but we don't.
Especially with time management. I don't know what it is, but we're like, we should be naturally good at this. And it's like, and the resolution should be fast. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people in this space know their audience, know people are overwhelmed and don't have a lot of time and want a quick fix. And so again, they talk about it as if it's like, you just plan for 30 minutes and you'll be good. And like, if you don't get that result, there's something wrong with you. And it's like, that's such not, again, maybe it's like a lack of roles and having less caretaking responsibilities to figure out. And I don't know what causes it, but I do feel like there is frustration, but there's also real power in embracing the reality of this stuff. And this stuff is harder than we want it to be. It's more time consuming than we want it to be, but the benefits are really, really there. I've had a client finish a planning session, her first one, and call her partner on the way home and was like, buy a bottle of champagne. I have not felt this good in so long. And like, I just think that's awesome. But let's be realistic about the work that goes into that.
I love that. Yeah. And let's not be afraid of the work that goes into it. Cause yeah, if you can get that feeling, I'll take that feeling every week. Heck yeah. That sounds great. Okay. I want to ask you about how you feel about getting help in the home, like hiring help, because I think there is a stigma around that for women that we should be able to do it all. And we should be able to do it all while looking fantastic and wearing heels and, juggling children and cooking and be fantastic at everything. So I want to get your 2 cents.
I do think it's such a emotionally fraught topic in a way that I don't think it should be, but I think that it is because, I think just spending money brings up a lot of emotions. We feel it in our body. I get like anytime I talk about spending money with anyone, but those conversations with my partner, I get a like tight constricted feeling and like kind of panicky. And so I just think it goes hand in hand with that. I am a huge proponent of outsourcing if you can. I'm a huge proponent of looking into outsourcing if you're curious. I think often it's more affordable than we think. I think that there's a wide range of what outsourcing can look like, from buying things more like pre-chopped vegetables and using Instacart to, hiring out laundry. There are people in my community who they do the laundry, but they hire someone to come in and fold and put away the laundry because they're like, that is the pain point for me. To obviously, like, there's a new movement to having like more like household managers and then people coming into the house and cooking. There's a huge range of what outsourcing can look like. I would say, again, I think a lot of it can be more affordable than people think. And that's what I used to think. I was like, some of this stuff is for billionaires and not me. And I just think it's worth looking into, because at the end of the day, when you calendar all of this stuff and you see like time is limited, there's no getting around that. Like, time is very limited. Our lives are very full. We either have to make some calls on eliminating some stuff, or we need to get creative on expanding our capacity. And by our, I mean like the capacity that your house works with. And if you need to outsource to expand some capacity and get some of the workload off your plate, I just don't think there's any honor in martyring ourselves. I think that there's never been more expected of women. We spend more time with our kids than we did in like the 1950s, like working moms did. Like, the expectations are pretty insane on us. And like, I say this as someone who, I will also couch this in, my husband's an ER physician. He's gone like all the time. We did bring him down to 80% this year, so that's been amazing. But on the whole, like, I solo parent a ton. And I am all for sharing the partnership at home equally, equitably, however you can do it. But there are a lot of people out there, that's not an option. Like, my husband is not home. He would love to share the load more, but he's not here. And it took me a while to realize the option is not me or him. It's like, I cannot and I don't want to do all of this on my own. And so how are we going to get some more support outside of ourselves? And for us, that's looked like hiring and outsourcing some stuff. It also prompted my move back to Minnesota from California. I was like, I need more family around. So I'm not saying it has to be paid everything, but I do think we cannot, and even if you could do it all, do you want to? Like, I think it's okay to be like, I don't want to do this. Like, not only is it, I don't want to cook or not cook, it's like, do I want to cook or do I want to get to work out today? And like, if you start having those, really understanding what is competing for time, or reading a book, or sleeping a little bit more, these are really valid things to think through. And I don't think there should be any shame in getting help on that front if you need to expand your capacity or reduce your workload.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate how you said there's so many different options, right? I think sometimes we have in our heads that it is either I get a housekeeper that comes in once a week or daily or whatever, and I just can't afford that, but maybe once a month would be okay. Or maybe you can exchange, childcare time with a friend. So it's not even a paid thing, but like once a week you take her kids for 3 hours, and once a week she takes your kids for 3 hours. And what could you do with those 3 hours?
I also have,
go ahead.
No, to your point, I do that with friends, especially on like those, we have a lot of like, this year we didn't even have that many snow days. We had cold days. It was too cold in Minnesota. And so my neighbor, it has another first grader and a younger son. And so I would take her kids for 2 hours, and then she would take mine for 2 hours. And that was 2 hours of time that I got to do stuff. Or another option is I have a 12-year-old in our neighborhood come over. Do you know how cool my little girls think a 12-year-old girl is? So cool. I don't leave the house. I guess, you can call it a mother's helper or whatever. I don't leave the house. She hangs out outside or downstairs with my kids. I pay her a lot cheaper because I can't leave the house. And, there's that element, but it's a cheaper thing. And I work. Like, I sit in my office and I get to work or clean up my room or try to hide from the children. But they do not think I'm cool when there's a 12-year-old girl there. So to your point, there's just a lot of different options that you can get creative with financially as well.
Yeah. Well, and one of our favorites, I'll give people a little insight into us, was date nights when we would have sleepovers, right? This happened one year. We had a friend that was having a birthday party and like an adult party. And was at a loss with what to do with our child. I couldn't find, we were new here. I didn't have a reliable babysitter. I couldn't find anybody. And it was so frustrating. And we had friends that were like, why don't we just have a sleepover? And I was like, oh my God, you are genius. I didn't have to worry about coming home at a certain hour. I knew my kiddo was safe and happy. Like she was having a blast. We were having a blast. And just that relief of like, okay, I got to watch the clock and get home at a certain time and do things a certain way. And I think it's just one of those things that can open your mind up to there are other options, right? It doesn't have to be this or that or exactly the way that someone else does it, or it could just be this random like thing that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I never thought of that before. So if you're struggling, like just Google other people's ideas and see if other people have other solutions for you, or just think outside the box. Like if this were a possibility, how can I make this a possibility instead of I can't? Like how could it work? So I absolutely have loved this conversation, Kelly. You are fantastic. I know the people listening, the moms and women listening to this are going to be like, okay, like tell me more. I got to get this calendar thing going. So where can people find you?
Sure thing. So I have a free program that you can try. It's at kellynolan.com/refresh. And I also share a ton of, just more bite-sized, timely time management strategies on Instagram. So I think it's @_Kelly_Nolan_. And I just share a lot of like, oh, it's almost spring break. Make sure you've calendared these things, that kind of stuff. So that can be helpful for people to have in their back pocket. Even if they know it, it's like a good reminder when it comes time.
Great reminder. I always say, I really wish I had someone to mother me. And so that might be the perfect little reminder, mothering reminder.
At least calendar release.
I love it. No, well, I mean, and that's half of the battle, right? Like I just, telling my daughter, okay, it's time to go brush your teeth. Okay, it's time to get ready for bed. Okay, it's time to turn the lights out so that you get a good night's sleep. I want someone to do that for me. Hey guys, guess what? Maybe that's Kelly. So let's check her out. We'll have the links in the show notes so you can get to her stuff really easily. And then my favorite way to close every episode is with 3 rapid fire questions. So number 1, what does clutter-free mean to you?
Clutter-free means to me, I think, not feeling like I need everything to be perfect at every minute, but on the whole being, whether we're talking physical clutter in my house or again, those to-dos flying at you, is just understanding that everything has a home eventually. And if you have a kind of system to get everything into its home eventually, then to me, that is realistic clutter-free, because every now and then it looks clean, but I don't feel the pressure to have it look perfect all the time.
Oh, I love that. Space for grace. That's fantastic. All right. Number 2, what is making you happy right now or in this season of life?
Well, I actually was going to say my kids' ages. They're 7 and 3 now. And I feel like we're coming out of those like tough little kid years, and that feels really good. But to your point on the bedtime stuff, one thing that really makes me happy is this app called OPAL, and it locks me out of whatever apps you want. I do Instagram and Facebook every night from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. And I cannot override it. It is locked. There is no overriding. And that, in this crazy world, is saving me and my sanity and my sleep. So highly recommend that one.
Ooh, all right. I'm going to check it out. We'll also put that in the show notes. And then number 3, what is a goal you have for yourself this year?
I am turning 40 this year. I'm actually turning 40 tomorrow as we record this. And I think it probably relates to my kids' ages as well, but also just being 40 and being, a high-achieving woman who's been probably too hard on myself over time, is really leaning into soaking in joy this year and finding activities that bring me joy again, and really just like leaning into them and making space for that again in my life. That's something I'm working on this year.
So good. Love it. And I've loved my 40s so far.
I'm excited.
The mid.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So it's good. It's a good thing.
Fantastic. All right, Kelly. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been phenomenal. Mwah, chef's kiss.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Cheers. OMG. Wasn't that good? What I loved about this conversation is how realistic Kelly's approach is. She's not asking us to overhaul our entire lives or wake up at 4 a.m. She is showing us how to use the time we already have in a smarter, more intentional way, and maybe even showing us that what we're trying to do isn't going to fit in the limited box that we have. That's okay. We can make some hard decisions and we can choose those things that are actually important to us and also show us that, you know what? Maybe we've been trying too hard to do something that isn't even possible and getting down on ourselves. I love how she just opened up about what really can be possible for us. And my biggest takeaway was that your calendar isn't just a place for meetings and appointments. It can actually free up your mind when you use it to hold everything from errands and work blocks to your own rest, recharge, all the to-dos, everything you have going on in your life, so you can get it out of your brain and into a place where you can actually manage it. That's the part that stuck with me the most, but I want to know what stood out the most for you. So head on over to Instagram. I am at Wannabe Clutter Free, and comment on this episode's post or tag me in your stories, or you can join our Facebook group, Wannabe Minimalist Family, and hop into the discussion thread over there for this episode. And if you found this episode helpful, one of the best ways you can support this show is to leave a rating or a review, and that's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps other busy women like you find the show and help them, right? Wouldn't it be great if we could change someone else's life today too? And don't forget to share this episode with a friend who could use a little more time management magic in her life. Huge thanks to Kelly for sharing her wisdom with us today. You can find all of her links and her 5-day reset and refresh program at wannabeclutterfree.com/258. Again, wannabeclutterfree.com/258. That's it for this week, but I'll be back next time with a solo episode, and I can't wait to share more with you then. Until next time, take care, keep things simple. Try using your calendar as where you keep all of the tasks that you have to do throughout your day. And remember, I believe in you. I'm Deanna Yates, and you've been listening to Wanna Be Clutter Free. I'll see you next week. Cheers.